Okay, good evening, everybody. My name is David Parker. I am the CEO of Entrepreneurship for All, EforAll, and we are really pleased to be offering a panel discussion for you tonight on managing your business through a crisis. And boy, do we have a crisis to deal with. I'm going to introduce the panelists, and then I will give you a little bit of information about EforAll, and then we'll jump in and see if we can get some words of wisdom from the folks that we put together. And not in any particular order, we have Desphpande. Desh, give a wave. And Desh is essentially the founding sponsor. He started EforAll about 10 years ago to serve initially the cities of Lowell and Lawrence, Massachusetts, which is both cities are about 30 miles northeast of Boston. He has himself been through and co-founded a bunch of companies that were incredibly successful in the 90s and has been involved in promoting entrepreneurship and particularly inclusive entrepreneurship ever since. Brad Feld is with us. Brad, give a wave. Brad is a recent addition to the EforAll family. He is a major sponsor of our program, which has set up in Longmont, Colorado. And Brad is calling in from there. He is also a venture capitalist. And before that, he started a couple of companies. He's been very, very successful in all that he's been involved with. Gail Goodman is with us. Gail, give a wave. Gail is EforAll's board chair. She and I work very closely together. And as you can imagine, these days we talk pretty much daily. And so that's been an absolute delight for EforAll to take advantage of her wisdom because Gail has an incredibly successful career, including taking constant contact as the founding CEO all the way through 17 years of growth. She also lately has joined a new startup called Pepperlane, and she'll be talking a little bit about that. And then we have Frank Carvalho. Frank, give a wave.
I did.
Yeah. Frank is with us. He's been involved in EforAll from the very beginning. Desh sort of put things together, and Frank joined us immediately. He's based in Lowell, Frank is, and has been advising us, mentoring for us, partnering with us ever since. And he is, I think, going to add a lot of value to this discussion for two reasons. First of all, he and his brother have literally been involved in a pizza shop in downtown Lowell for 50 years. They've owned it for 31. And so he can talk about managing that business through prior issues and currently. And secondly, Frank is the CEO and founder of the Mill Cities Community Investments, MCCI, which is a CDFI, a financial institution that lends in the local communities, in particular to smaller companies that can use the help. And so Frank is also then has business relationships with many, many other small businesses in the Lowell and Lawrence areas and can relate to us and all of you in the audience how things are going there. So let me talk a little bit, just for 2 sentences or so, about EforAll. So EforAll's mission is accelerating economic and social impact in communities nationwide through inclusive entrepreneurship. We have now helped over 500 entrepreneurs start their companies, and most of them are small. And we love small companies. We have no issue with that. Occasionally we get some big ones, and we love them too. But we're sort of in the business of generating singles and doubles, and if we get the occasional triple and home run, we're happy regardless. The challenge, of course, and I'm hoping that many entrepreneurs in the EforAll family are listening and participating in this discussion, is that small businesses have been hit really, really hard by this current issue with the coronavirus. And many companies are literally at a total standstill, like just shut down, and others are barely, getting a little bit of sales. And of course, that's an incredibly stressful thing for folks to go through. And the hope is that from this discussion, from these folks who have been in business for so many years, and from their different perspectives, that you're going to get some words of wisdom to help you get through this situation. We're not looking for the nitty gritty, like this is exactly how you do this or that. This is more just how you can get your mind thinking about getting through this crisis and learn from folks who have been through crises before and are dealing with this one as well. And hopefully you can learn from the examples they set. Just to give you a little flavor of what we're hearing from EforAll businesses and others in the local communities around us, we participated in a survey in the Lawrence area and had business owners write to us the kind of situation that they're in. So let me just read a couple of these. We are shut down. The banks are slowing down and getting nervous. Sales have gone to zero over the last week. We have lost all our business for March, April, and beyond. We see a large drop in class attendance for our yoga studio. We have delayed or withdrawn contracts. We have lost 98% of our sales. We've had to close our doors for an uncertain period of time. Our customer base wants no more visits from our salespeople. And these comments go on and on and on. So there's a lot of pain out there. So with that in mind, let's start off with Frank. Frank, I want you to sort of set the stage for us in terms of what you're seeing with the current situation from your perspective, both if you wouldn't mind just telling us how's life going with your pizza business, and then also if you can talk a little bit about MCCI and how it's doing with its loan portfolio and the other businesses that you're working with.
Very good. Good evening, everybody. The pizza place, Espresso Pizza in downtown Lowell, it has been in business since 1962. I have been associated with it from my days in high school as an employee, and it's been a 50-year relationship with 31 of them as the owner. In the last 50 years, we have seen a lot of economic upturn, downturn. We have seen half of the city of Lowell closed with empty storefronts. We have had snowstorms that we had to deal with and forced us to close for 2, 3, 4 days. We have had a lot of other events that forced us to shut down for about a week, but nothing like this before. The first reaction is, what do you do? How are you going to survive this? Even though you're in business for 60 years, how are you going to survive? So what we decided to do is what we do best. We will continue to provide the quality food that has kept us in business for 6 years at an affordable price. There was a lot of thought. We had the only pizza place in downtown Lowell or in Lowell in general that we do not deliver. We have takeout, we have sit-in, we can sit 60 people. But when the governor ordered the dining room closed, we said, okay, what do we do now? Fortunately, we have over the years had a very loyal following, and we have 2, 3 generations of people coming in. So our business is down, but it's down only about 20–25%. But we had to adapt to it. We had to sit down with the employees, and we told the employees, and we have 18 in total, 10 full-time, 8 part-times, that this is unprecedented times. We don't want them to go anywhere. We want to keep them. But for the good of all of us, as we see the drop in sales, we would proportionally cut hours in order to maintain them working if they want to work. If they wanted to get laid off, we would do so, but they chose to continue to work. So we are operating as normal as we can, but with decisions being made on a daily basis. How much food do you buy? How much do you carry? Are they going to shut us down because there is so many cases around us? So we go day by day, and it's unprecedented. We never seen anything like that. On the other hand, I see things through a different perspective through the CDFI, where we work with small business. We provide, we are a natural sequence to EforAll. EforAll helps people develop the business model and test the ideas, and we help them implementing their business plan, either through putting together the formal business plan or by investing in them and giving them the loans that the banks are not willing to give because they are startups. Well, guess what? That is a standstill, because we got the source of funding is from the banks. And the banks don't want to lend money right now because they don't know how people can pay it back. And we have a portfolio where people are struggling.
I think we lost Frank for a second there. So we'll wait for his connection to come back. So while we're waiting for that, let me jump over to you, Desh. You have been involved with all kinds of different companies. They've gotten really big, and yet small business from the last 20 years of helping small businesses getting started. You always seem to have amazing advice in terms of how to help people get through particular situations. So what kind of general advice, and as you hear Frank talk about the challenges he's facing at his pizza shop and dealing with folks who can't repay loans, and you heard the quotes that I started with, what kind of advice comes to your mind, Desh, in terms of like letting people sort of think about how to get through this situation?
Yes, David, being in business for decades, it's hard to go through it without reaching a near-death experience. But this one is a little different. So I don't want to minimize the situation that our EforAll entrepreneurs and other entrepreneurs are going through, because it's nothing like what we've seen before. But a few tips. Number one, we should make sure that our entrepreneurs don't swing between two extremes, meaning on one side, get paralyzed by saying, there's nothing I can do. And on the other side, start feeling guilty that they're not able to do enough. So I think staying balanced in these situations, in these crisis situations, is definitely a very, very useful tool to have. So we have to, as entrepreneurs, clearly separate between what's under our control and what's not under our control, and not worry about things that are not under our control. But there may be things that are that we have access to that we're not aware of. So staying connected with the EforAll entrepreneurs, with the staff of EforAll, I think is very important. So I think once you get a good feel for what you can control and what you cannot control, then I think you can actually be proactive about what you do. So what are the different strategies? Number one, I think you should, if you can, most of our businesses are pretty small. If there's a way we can repurpose the business so that we can cater to the current conditions, that would be a home run. But it's not possible for everybody, because not everybody's strength plays to the current crisis. If not, I think we need to make sure that when we emerge, it's going to be different. I mean, this is going to take a lot longer in terms of the normal behavior coming back into everyday life. So people need to make sure that they have some feeling for what the world is going to be like in 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, so that when they emerge out of this crisis and we're all allowed to do business again, that they're well positioned to cater to that new marketplace.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Okay, excellent. Thank you, Desh. I think we're still waiting for Frank to get back to him. I'm sure we'll figure that out. Let's switch over to you, Brad, in Colorado. So you've invested in a gazillion companies and probably have, how many active investments are you managing at this point through your VC firm and otherwise?
VC firms, probably around 80 companies, and then investments in another 30 venture funds. But I'm also a co-founder of Techstars, which has about 2,000 active investments all around the world. And then I have a number of personal investments outside the funds themselves. So many, many, many companies.
Right. And I've got to think that your phone and email and any other way that people can reach you, you're getting a fair amount of people checking in and saying, okay, Brad, give me some advice. Here's the situation I'm faring with. So can you do your best to sort of summarize what's your situation look like? the EforAll community, as you heard me describe it, is a lot of smaller businesses. And I'm sure you also have a whole bunch of smaller businesses in there too, but maybe ones that have gained some funding, but they still have to be really scared, right? And so what kind of advice are you able to give them?
Well, for the entrepreneurial companies that I tend to invest in, many of which are high growth, some of which are quite large today by startup standards, 500,000, 1,500 people. Interestingly, we are now in a different phase than we were even 2 weeks ago, where I believe that people have shifted from some mental model of this may or may not be a big deal. We had a number of companies, investments in Seattle, plus Techstars has a number of investments in Asia. So I saw, in Europe, so I had the experience of that starting going all the way back to January. I also am an investor in many hardware related companies that depend on a Chinese supply chain. So I had the experience of the supply chain shutting down at the beginning of the year. But generally in the US, it feels like we have shifted since the beginning of March. If you go back to the end of February even, there was plenty of anxiety, but there wasn't this massive shift across the whole country in the way business was happening. The schools hadn't been shut down yet, college and high school. Cities, even like Seattle, that had encouraged people to stay at home hadn't started to do shelter at home yet. And even though there was a fair amount of business shutdown and work from home, it wasn't really until the week of March 7th that started to roll out more significantly and proactively, I think, with the entrepreneurial community. So we've shifted into this mindset of, all right, we're in the midst of a real crisis. And it's important, and it's a conversation that I have over and over with these companies, some of whom have seen their businesses go to zero, right? If you depend on people traveling, or you depend on people physically going to an office to work, which we have some companies in our portfolio that have those requirements. I mean, that's what their businesses are built on. Their businesses have literally gone to zero. In those situations, though, we're trying to have people understand the difference between a humanitarian and health crisis and an economic crisis. If you go back to sort of focus on it from a business perspective, and you look at other downturns, whether it was the internet bubble or the financial crisis, or even going back in time, in my lifetime, I'm in my mid-50s, there really have not been health crises that were the driver of the economic crisis. This is the first time that that's happening. If we didn't have a healthcare crisis, we would be unlikely to have an economic crisis. So intellectually and emotionally, to some degree, one of the things to realize is that part of the incredible anxiety that everybody is feeling, and the reason, and Frank says it very well, it's very different over 60 years of crises, is that we have an enormous amount of anxiety that comes from the healthcare crisis, separate from the economic crisis. And then the flow into the economic crisis adds a second layer of stress and anxiety on the system. So one of the things that is important in that is to separate essentially the idea of what I would say rational thought around what's going on. You've got to make decisions. I think Frank was really eloquent about what he's done with his pizza business, how he's communicated it to his employees, how they're looking at it literally day to day and making decisions with whatever the current situation is. That's critical. That's different than feeling anxious about everything that's going on and trying to internalize your anxiety, your family members' anxiety, your friends' anxiety, your community anxiety, which is something that you also have to do. And then the third is this thing that you should try your hardest to avoid, which is panic. And the reason it's so important to try to avoid panic, and it comes back to what Desh said, so many things that are going on are not under our control. And they're changing so rapidly. Right now, they're changing very much for the worst. in a lot of places, but there's many, many people who are now mobilized to try to get things to stabilize and then to turn back around. And so instead of panicking about the things you can't control, trying to put your energy into the things that you can, recognizing that there's these enormous stresses, both from a health perspective, from an emotional perspective, and a financial perspective, on you, on your communities, on the people you work with, but to try to be as sort of deliberate as you can, as quickly as you can, without panicking.
Outstanding. Frank, welcome back.
Thank you. I lost internet connection for some reason. I don't know why.
No worries. You want to finish your comment, Frank? I think you were going to talk a little bit about how your investments or lending at MCCI has been going and how you're dealing with it.
Yes, basically it's a different perspective from the pizza place, because we are looking at it from two different angles. One, as a business ourselves, we have to make adjustments. Do we maintain everybody working? Do we lay off people? How do we maintain operations going? Because a lot of our money comes from the investments that we make, the loans that we make. But we are looking to help our small businesses, so we are going to waive any interest income coming in for the next 3 months. And that's a good 25 to 30% of our budget. So we negotiated with the banks to cut our expense. We don't pay the banks anything as long as, and we are, this way we can afford to pass that on to our clients and hopefully maintain the operations ongoing as smooth as we possibly can, understanding that it's not business as usual. Our projected income for this year was we were going to make X amount of loans. Well, in this scenario, how can we make loans? Nobody wants to borrow money; they cannot pay it back. And do we want to lend money that we're not going to get back? We would be at a business, so it's very difficult. But we are not panicking. We are looking at it and say, everybody is in the same boat here. And if we put our heads together, we will find the solutions. Let's not despair. Let's not go crazy thinking that's the end of everything. It's temporary. These too shall pass. We don't know how long, but we with determination will make it through.
All right. We love the optimism. And you made a lot of comments that I think other people will be referring to in terms of the techniques that you're using. So thanks for sharing that. Gail, you ran Constant Contact for literally 17 years. That's long enough, I'm sure, to have seen a couple of crises that you went through there. And now you're involved with a very new startup, Pepper Lane. So can you talk a little bit about what have you seen in crises? You've heard the others say that, yeah, we've had all kinds of tough situations, but nothing really like what we're seeing now. Do you feel the same way?
Oh, I very much feel the same way. You know, I led Constant Contact through 2 economic downturns. The first one was near fatal. But as Brad mentioned, neither of them were kind of connected to something. Neither of them were, believe it or not, quite as sudden. There were warning signs on the horizon. I think part of what we're all dealing with is just how quickly we went from full speed to full stop, and how radically different our lives are now that we're kind of sheltering in place. It's just inconceivable. If you had told me a month ago I would look out my window and see nobody on the streets, just inconceivable. So there's a lot of emotions and a lot of processing I think we're all going through. In the first financial crisis, so I will say at Constant Contact, I wrote 2 shutdown plans, got within a week twice of literally calling it quits. And one of the themes that I kind of hung on to then, that's been useful at Pepper Lane in the last few weeks, is live to fight another day. This idea of really, without panic, without overreacting, right? really thinking about how do I just pare ourselves and my company down to the bare minimum so I can live to fight another day. And sometimes that does involve having to let go of some people. So I'm a little raw because today we let go of about a third of Pepper Lane. So it's tough. I mean, so we as leaders will face these moments, and we need to face them with compassion, and we need to treat everybody as well as we possibly can. But we also need to remember the mission and the purpose that drives us. So we all started our companies because of some passion, some problem we wanted to solve, some inner why that we thought we could solve in the world. And living to fight another day is holding on to that purpose, that reason why you got into this in the first place, and using that as your anchor, as your kind of inner core strength, so you can make some choices and some decisions that let you live to fight another day.
Wow. Well, thanks for sharing that, Gail. And sorry you're having a tough day. So I really appreciate you. Appreciate you sharing that with us. Let me. We've been asking the folks who are listening on Facebook to send in questions, and so let me. Now that we've heard from each of our panelists, let me introduce a question that's come in from Lori. So she says one of her markets that she sells to is higher education, which of course we all know has been hammered. I'm sensitive to all they are going through, but once things are up and running again, when do you suggest I start a conversation with the schools? I do not want to appear aggressive or insensitive. Any thoughts on that?
So maybe I'll hop in and say one of the pieces of advice I'm giving to everyone is communicate with your customers, if only to say, can I help? I think aggressive marketing is completely tone deaf, and Lori has got the right instincts not to do that. But to be present for customers and even for prospects to see if there are things you can do to help, and over communicate. And I'm really not talking about the flood of say nothing COVID emails we've gotten. As someone who did email marketing, I've been offended by all of the brands that think they need to tell me they know what's happening without any real content. But really reaching out, even one-on-one with your key contacts, to just say, how you doing? And is there anything I can do to help? It sounds very simple, but people are under an immense amount of stress, and being, I think, human and present is a big thing you can do now to set you up well. And I think it will then give you the instincts for when it's okay to start marketing.
Gail, you just mentioned it sounds simple. Simple is good. When we are in business, we are building relationships. And by her going to her client base and offering the services that is going to achieve what they need to achieve, especially since there will be so much to be patched back together, I don't think it's being aggressive. It's just showing up at the right place at the right time and maybe being the solution for someone who needed that solution but didn't know where to get it.
I'll underscore also something Gail said, which is in this moment, everyone is under immense stress. Many people, I'm one of them, when I'm stressed, I find it more valuable and more powerful to stop thinking about myself and think about others, and think about how I can help others, because it gives me a sense of purpose in that moment when I'm feeling incredible anxiety. I still have to take care of myself. It's not being completely selfless, but it's shifting your business instincts and your emotion to asking that question of the people that you're interacting with, your customers, your prospects, and also other people around the system that you have relationships with. How can I be helpful? And in that moment, oftentimes really interesting things come out of it that are short-term business opportunities, because, well, the business you're in, selling into higher education, I don't know your product, but whatever your current product is, there may be no appetite or energy or focus on purchasing it today, but there are many, many things that college education universities need, and college kids who are at home for the most part in their childhood house very much want things to do. And so there might be, again, depending on your product, by simply saying, what can I do to be helpful in this moment? Your customer or your prospect might say, if only we had a blah. And in that moment, maybe that's an opportunity for you with the resources that you have that might be different than your core product, but can be something that is a piece of business. So trying to have that sort of nimbleness in this moment, but again, shifting the mirror. So instead of worrying, oh my God, what's happening to my business is not going to make it, I don't know what to do, this is so awful, turn it around and say, yeah, this is tough for everybody. How can I help some other people?
So I'm hearing tremendous words of advice from the three of you, and it does make me think about it, within EforAll, sort of a couple of tenets that we want to make sure all of our entrepreneurs think about is, first of all, don't ever forget about the needs of your customer, right? That's why we had everybody at EforAll go out and literally talk to their intended customers and ask them what's painful, what's hard. And this is a great time to be asking those questions. And secondly, we also ask our EforAll entrepreneurs to literally do good things to other people, because it almost always repays itself back. Like, you do something nice to somebody else and they will do something to you eventually. And this is a great time to do that. Like, just to be offering assistance, anything I can do to help goes a long way. So Desh, let's come back to you. You launched a bunch of companies after you had come to the U.S. In the Boston area, and some did well, others I think you had some challenges with. As you think back upon those days and put yourself into the entrepreneur shoes that you wore then, do you ever think about being ready to deal with a crisis? Not many entrepreneurs do, but I'm sure you faced a bunch of them. And do you look at life differently? Would you have done anything differently in terms of how you started those companies if you thought that, boy, in 2 years, there might be some crisis that we're going to have to go through? What kind of, as you look backwards, is anything like I would have done it differently? Anything come to mind?
Yeah, David, I think risk means different things to different people. And every time I get lost, I always think about the fact that I came in 1973 from India to this continent with $8 in my pocket. So in some ways, as long as I have more than $8 in my pocket, I'm ahead of the game. And so risk takes a very different context. So the first business that I started, this was 87. I and my wife had saved $10,000, very hard-earned money. And I had another partner who put in $10,000. So we both put in $10,000 each, $20,000. I quit my job, worked for almost a year. And then the 87 crisis happened. The stock market fell down. And then there's no way we could raise the money. And unfortunately, it did happen to be a dead end. But it wasn't the end of the story. So I'm hoping that all of our EforAll entrepreneurs will find a way to get through and survive and get another day to live again and play the game again, like Gail is saying. But some may not make it. But that's not the end of the entrepreneurial game. Once you become an entrepreneur, you get a taste of it, and you're always an entrepreneur. And so very quickly, within a few weeks, I was able to regroup and come up with another idea. raise funds again, and get things going, and then things work for me. So I think crisis is always an opportunity to innovate, to think differently, to regroup. And so, that's what Churchill said. It's a terrible thing to waste a crisis. You have to make sure that you create another opportunity out of the crisis.
We love stories with happy endings. Thanks for sharing that, Desh. Frank, I'm wondering, it sounds like you're making really good decisions these days in terms of how you manage your pizza shop, and you're doing a great job of reaching out to your customers and your funders at MCCI. How are you making these decisions, Frank? Is it just literally just you? I know you co-own the pizza shop with your brother. Is there a process that you're going through that others might be able to learn from?
Well, we are not an island, and we have our connections. And at the pizza place, I have my wife, my son, my daughter, my brother, and we come up with different ideas. For example, my daughter the other day said, Dad, I have this idea. I'm going to get the dough, the sauce, and the cheese. I'm going to make pizza home. And then she took a picture of it and put it on Facebook and said, hey, guys, how about during this time that we are home, that we do some home act with the kids? There was 15,000 people that saw that. And we started selling pizza kits, okay? For the same price that we're not going to gouge anybody. For the price of a pizza, you can make a pizza home with your kids and stuff like that. So creative things. And I rely on the people that I trust, which in the pizza business is my family, my brother. And at MCCI, I rely on my board of directors. They are all experienced people. They all have different ideas. They all have different skills. And I rely on my employees. My employees also have a lot of different experiences. And together, we put together a plan how we're going to deal with certain situations. I am talking to you on Facebook today. I'm the worst IT inclined person you ever will meet. But we're able in a short week to set up things with the help of with an expert that everybody at work is now working off-site. They are working from home. I'm the only stubborn that going to the office every day, but everybody else is off-site, and we learn how to use the technology in order to maintain operations going. So you got to rely on the people that you trust, and people who have different experiences and expertise, and be open-minded. Don't be stubborn. Don't say it's my way or the highway. Listen to people who have different experience, different knowledge, and together you might be able to come up with the right decisions for your business.
Outstanding. Brad, can you talk a little bit about you talked before about, only concentrating on the things that you can affect, but it's really challenging, I think, for everybody to block things out completely. And so there's just so much stress out there that people have to deal with, whether it's, family life issues, kids are home, or, relatives, or there's just so many things. Do you have any counsel for folks to just maintain some sort of literally balance in their lives, of sort of the mental stability, the not getting depressed? Anything come to mind, or anybody giving you advice along those lines?
We could spend the whole hour talking about some of these things. I've done several talks with companies in the last couple of days specifically about this. I've also been very open personally and in public about my own struggles over the years with depression, and how I've learned how to deal with managing my own anxiety and being effective when I'm struggling with a depressive episode. So I just put that as the backdrop against the comments I'm going to say. one of the things that humans really like is some routine, any sort of routine. And what's happened because of this crisis, this very, this microscopic organism has completely disrupted the routine of our entire civilization. And if you think about it, right, you don't go to work anymore. Frank is stubborn and goes to the office, but he's the only person in the office now.
Right.
Your kids are living at home again. You can't really travel and visit people. You can't do the normal things you do. If you go to, coffee every morning at a place, or you go to a restaurant once a week with friends, or you can't do those things. And so we don't have our own routines. It's just this complete disruption of that. And so one of the really useful things to do is to pick a few, 1 or 2 or 3 simple routines and incorporate them into your day every day. And here's some examples for me. My wife and I, Amy Batchelor, don't have kids. So, we don't have the pressure of kids, but I have an intense, crushing workload because of both my work and then stuff I'm doing for the state of Colorado during this. Amy is on several very large organization, nonprofit boards and runs our foundation. So she's very, very busy dealing with a bunch of stuff, more busy than normal. And so we committed to each other Monday to Friday that we would have lunch together every day, which, by the way, is something we never do. Even when we're both working out of the house, we almost never do it. So we've added that into our routine. We have a routine that we've doubled down on, which we call 4 minutes in the morning. And basically, we don't wake up at the same time, but when the second person wakes up and sort of comes in to start making my cup of coffee or her cup of coffee, the other person stops what they're doing, and we spend 4 minutes together just sort of waking up and saying hello. Now, it may sound a little corny, but the routine of every day starts to give you a pattern again that has some sense of normalcy. And we've even noticed in the last 2 weeks that the intensity of everything, even though it's high, has started to not feel as oppressive because we have these moments that are our routines. There's many other things you can do, whether it's exercise, make sure you're getting enough sleep. That's a particularly hard thing to do in this environment, and your brain and your body needs that time to sort of regenerate itself. Think about the things that you do that are avoidant or that are not healthy for you, and try to minimize them in these moments. You're not going out to dinner all the time. You're not going out to the bar. You're not drinking. Don't replicate things that may not be that helpful to you in terms of building your energy. And then the last part of it is to view this as a phenomena that doesn't have a determinate endpoint. We're very hopeful that, especially in the United States, that we'll get ahead of the healthcare part of this crisis pretty quickly. It'll probably take another at least month or 2, but let's assume that we can get past it. It's not just going to snap back to normal after that, because the disease will still be out there. We're going to have to change our patterns of behavior to minimize the spread of the disease. We can look to countries like China and Singapore and South Korea to see what they've been doing that's been effective around it. And we can anticipate that we'll be doing some of those things or many of those things in the United States. But we still are going to have economic stress. And so it's not that you can say, well, this is going to be over on, May 27th. We don't know. And because you don't know, allowing yourself to not put that additional pressure of, okay, I'll just do it like this until it gets better. But instead, try to start to change those routines and build them in so that they're healthy and sustainable. And by the way, my guess is that those routines, many of them will persist well past this crisis, because you'll find some new things that you're doing that you say, wow, I like to do that. That gives me energy, or it makes me feel more connected to my partner, or more connected to my kids, or more connected to my parents, or more connected to my friends. One last bonus tip, especially for people who like to go out to dinner with their friends, or like to go out to dinner with their family and are finding that you're not going out to dinner right now. Amy and I have committed to doing with our friend set dinner party every Saturday and Sunday night. And you say, well, how could you possibly do a dinner party every Saturday, Sunday night if you can't go to restaurants? And the answer is we use this. And whether you use Zoom or you use Facebook or you use Skype or whatever, you put if you have a computer, you put a computer at the dinner table, or you gather around the computer, and for 60 or 90 minutes with 2 or 3 other couples or your family members, you just be together. And it feels weird, but it feeds that need of us as humans to connect with each other. And when we introduce that back into parts of our experiences that we're used to, it actually takes that anxiety level way down.
Brilliant. All right. Thank you so much, Brad. And I assume we're all invited to dinner. Is that okay?
Sure.
Excellent. So we have 12 minutes to go. I'm going to jump to questions. We have a bunch of questions coming in from the folks who are listening. The first one is from an entrepreneur in EforAll, Roxbury. So his startup is just starting to get paying customers. Is it better now to waive the charges and continue to sign up folks essentially for free, or only focus on signing up paying customers, even if it takes many months to get them to sign up? Anybody have any experience on either of those? Desh, I see you thinking about that one.
Yeah, so it's a I think ultimately cash is king. So he has to make sure that he has enough cash to get through. I think it's a well-proven model now to catch enough eyeballs, build a customer base, and then monetize what you get. But you need to make sure that EforAll entrepreneurs are not very heavily capitalized and they don't have access to a lot of capital. So I think as long as they're speaking to their mentors and making sure that they have enough cash to get through this whatever the uncertain period is, I think it's a good strategy. But otherwise, I would conserve the cash and really still continue to build the customer base, but not start serving them for free until we get out of the whole thing.
Great.
I would also suggest to if the thing that you need to do to service your customer has a very low cost. In other words, you have a web-based or a mobile-based application that once a customer signs up, there's not a human labor component around it. Thinking about changing your customer acquisition model right now so there is a free period to get people on the application is important and useful, but you need to set the expectation of when it will become a paid service. And you need to, even now, and you need to make sure that people are actually using it versus just signing up for it. And then I'd separate that from the businesses where there's a labor component associated with delivering the service, where even though it's free, it's actually going to be negative to you because you're going to have to pay to deliver the service. And in this moment, back to Desh's cash is king comment, that's not very good business. And all it's going to do is drain your limited resources in this period of time where you don't know what the time frame that you have to do that for. So try to be creative. And again, if you're in that first category, doing it, but setting the expectation and then making sure people use it, because getting a bunch of people to sign up for what you do and then having nobody use it is a waste of energy. If there's a cost associated with it, I would probably both recommend against that and try to be creative to see if there's something you can do for those people that are interested that does not have much of a cost associated with it, whether it's just information, advice, or something that can be in a very lightweight way delivered that allows you to stay connected to them rather than having to deliver your full product or service to them.
All right, great. Gail, why don't you take this one? How do you deal with fear? The fear of calling a customer and asking, how can I help? And then the customer says, can you pause my subscription payments until further notice? The fear that this will decimate your revenue if you do that. In other words, they're worried that they're going to get like a really tough situation by asking what they can do to help. Any suggestions?
So I think that's a very real risk if it's a subscription. Sounds like this person has a subscription business. And so I would be prepared with a response that you're going to have to that. And that might be something in the middle, which is, I was thinking about the previous question. It is really clear that everybody's worried about the businesses around them, the businesses they care about, the businesses that support them. So it's okay to be straight up about, I'm also at risk of not being able to stay afloat. What if we split the difference, right? Maybe I'll give you a discount, maybe, and maybe even being ready with that as an offer, just knowing exactly how you're going to respond to that. And it sounds crazy. People often say, God, you sound like you really think well on your feet. And it's like, yeah, that's because I have bullet points written down. I practice stuff. That's why I sound so good. I have literally got my notes here for how I was going to answer questions. So think about some of those tough questions and really script out. I don't mean every word, but get to a place where you feel comfortable how you're going to handle that. And if the answer is, can you give me a discount? Having a really I'd love to, I'm also facing challenges. Here's what I do have that can help. And once you know how you're going to respond to tough questions, even if it feels awkward to respond that way, it gives you a little more confidence making that fearful call. But I will also say it's completely normal to have fear when you're cold calling someone is in crisis or distressed. It's normal, right? And so one of my things is 3 deep breaths, and then just do it. Like a little Nike, just do it. So FAQ the tough questions so you know how you're going to respond. Take a few deep breaths and be bold. Opportunity goes to those that are bold. Go ahead.
Frank, I got to think that when you called the banks to see if they would restructure your loans, they might have said no. Did you have the same kind of thinking in mind that Gail is suggesting?
I had a couple of fears for the 2 different businesses. First of all, yes, the banks could have said no to me, and now I have to say no to my clients, right? To my customers. The fear, but what maybe overcome the fear was that the banks is in their best interest that they work with us so we don't default and they have a longer term problem. So they were in a position to step in and say, okay, we will afford you that so you can afford that to the clients. And we were fine with that. At the pizza business, I was in fear, boy, I'm gonna buy what I normally buy for the week. And what if I don't sell? What if I had to throw it away? So I called the vendors and said, okay, guys, you deliver once a week. I don't want to stop buying from you. Is there any chance that we can work out something where you deliver to me 2 or 3 times? And this way, I give you the business that you need, but I don't lose out and you lose a customer at the end. And they work with me. They said, well, of course, we will do that. So I think we have to overcome our fears. And I always joked around before that when you ask a question, you're going to get a yes or no or maybe. Those are the only 3 answers that you're going to get. So keep it simple.
I'd add one more thing into that just very quickly about how do you overcome your fear, not about the specific, but about something that you need to do, but you're afraid to do it, or you're feeling fear or anxiety about doing it. It's very powerful when you make whatever your version of a to-do list is, to put those things at the beginning and do them at the very beginning of the day, first thing. Get them out of the way. Because what will happen is whatever the outcomes are, you will have released the fear and then you'll be able to concentrate on the rest of the day. If you leave them on your list for the rest of the day, you're going to be thinking about them while you're doing other things, and it's going to interfere with your ability to get through the other things and to feel comfortable doing it. So it's very powerful to move up the stuff to the beginning and just address it, because you're going to have to deal with it anyway.
All right, perfect. Gail, I'm so impressed that you showed us that sheet of paper of your answers to questions. So I want to hear your answer to this one that I told you was coming, which is you've managed massive companies, you've mentored EforAll entrepreneurs with very, very small businesses. What's your, if you have any, consistent advice for these business leaders, regardless of size of business, on how to get through this situation?
I had wrote down two things. One we've already talked about, which is stay close to your customers. They will support you. At Pepperlane, the Pepperlane community has responded just incredibly strongly in the crisis. At Constant Contact, whenever I got sad, I just went and got a customer fix, because they would just, knowing what we were doing was so purposeful, lifted my spirits and kept me going. And I do think in this crisis in particular, the good news is that there's just a high degree of awareness of how vulnerable businesses are, particularly the kinds of businesses we've started at EforAll. So customers do want to support you. So if you give them an opportunity to do so, they will. And the second thing I wrote down was treat everyone with compassion, because people remember how you respond in a crisis. So whether that's people inside your company, suppliers, customers, we will come out of this crisis, and people have long memories if you didn't show up for them and show up for them authentically. And that has just always been an extraordinarily good formula for me, big, small, whatever stage.
Outstanding. Desh, any last words of advice for the audience?
Well, I think our EforAll entrepreneurs are EforAll for all times. So I'm sure if they leverage their mentors, the EforAll staff, that they will come out of this crisis and would love to see them flourish and do extremely well. I wish them all the best.
Excellent. All right. Well, I want to say it's just turning 9 o'clock Eastern time, and I want to thank all of our panelists for really an amazing session. We got an amazing range of answers to a lot of problems that were presented, and their words of wisdom I knew would come, and they did. So a big silent round of applause for our panelists. And also for everybody who's new to EforAll, please come to our website at eforall.org and see what we're all about. We are in 9 communities now, 8 in Massachusetts, 1 in Colorado near to Brad. And we are looking to be in more communities eventually, actually in person, but of course everything that we're doing now is online. But we're always looking for new ones. So if you're interested, let us know, come to our website, and we'd love to talk to you. Look on our website for more of these sessions that we will be scheduling. Get onto our email list, and we'll continue to offer you advice and tips on how to get through this crisis. Thank you very much for checking in, and good luck with your businesses, and hopefully you can take some of the lessons learned from tonight to help you get forward. Good night.